And we begin first up with updates that are coming in from the Indian state of Gujarat. A large-scale DNA sampling drive that's been underway to identify the victims of the airplane crash in Ahmedabad. Forensic teams are working continuously to identify victims of the Air India plane crash. In fact, DNA results are expected within 72 hours. Details also coming in that India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the crash site in Ahmedabad earlier today. Alright, so while the DNA analysis has been ongoing for several hours now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the crash site in Ahmedabad earlier today. He was briefed by the officials on the ongoing operations, the DNA sampling that's been underway since yesterday. Prime Minister Modi also visited the hospital to meet the lone survivor of the crash. A London-bound passenger jet had crashed in Ahmedabad on Thursday. At least 265 people were on board, and on the ground, one passenger has miraculously survived the plane crash. 40-year-old Vishwas Kumar is the sole survivor of the crash. The government, meanwhile, has opened a formal investigation into the cause of the crash. Air India CEO Campbell Wilson arrived at the plane crash site earlier today. Parallelly, India's Civil Aviation Authority has said that 2 pilots and 10 cabin crew were among those on board. Air India has also released a statement that says there were 169 Indian passengers, 53 British, 7 Portuguese and a Canadian on board the flight bound for London's Gatwick Airport. That suggests that at least 25 people died when, 24 people died when the jet ploughed into a medical staff hostel in a blazing fireball, and that the toll may rise further as more bodies are located. So over 260 people who have lost lives in this fatal crash. UK Prime Minister meanwhile said that the scenes from the crash site have been devastating, while the country's King Charles III said that he was desperately shocked. Now, Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, who's the lone survivor in the crash of London-bound Air India flight in Ahmedabad, says that he does not know how he made it out alive. He's recounted the moments of his miraculous survival. Listen into what he has to say.
मेरे नज़रों के सब सामने हुआ था. मेरे खुद को भी बिलीव नहीं होता कि मैं कैसे उसमें से जिंदा बाहर निकला, क्योंकि थोड़ा टाइम लिए कि तो मेरे को लगा था कि मैं भी मरने वाला हूँ, लेकिन जब मेरी आँख खुल के मैं देखा ना तो मुझे लगा मैं ज़िंदा हूँ. तो मैंने ट्राई किया, जब मेरी सीट थे वो मेरी बेल्ट निकाला, मैंने वो ट्राई किया जहाँ से निकल सकता वहाँ से, तो मैं निकल गया वहाँ से. मेरे सामने नज़रों के सामने एयर हॉस्टल और दूसरे आंटी अंकल सभी उसमें मेस हो गए थे सभी. मैं जो साइड पे था ना, वो साइड हॉस्टल पे नहीं लैंड हुई थी. हॉस्टल के जो ग्राउंड फ्लोर है ना, जैसे नीचे वहाँ लैंड हुई थी. तो मुझे दूसरे के बारे में मेरे को पता नहीं, लेकिन मैं जहाँ लैंड हुआ था ना वो नीचे की साइड थी. तो जब वहाँ थोड़ा पेस भी था प्लेन के जब बाहर, तो जब जैसे मेरा डोर टूटा ना सब, तो मैंने देखा ना जब सामने कि थोड़ा इधर पेस है, मैं ट्राई कर सकता हूँ निकलने के लिए. तो मैंने ट्राई किया निकलने के लिए, तो फिर मैं निकल गया उधर, क्योंकि अपोजिट साइड पे थे ना वो बिल्डिंग का वो था ना दीवार, तो उधर से कोई शायद नहीं निकल सका होगा, क्योंकि उधर पूरा उधर ही क्रैश हुआ था. मैं जो जहाँ था वहाँ ही थोड़ा पेस था. फिर भी मेरे पता नहीं मैं कैसे बचा हूँ, क्योंकि मेरे नज़र के सामने ही सब दो एयर होस्टल वो अंकल आंटी सब उधर ही सब.
In fact, important to note here that the key black box that's been recovered from the crash site, which is going to be crucial in the investigation here on. Our principal correspondent, Disha Shah, has gotten us this report from the ground. Listen in to this ground report.
The count that has been given by the Ahmedabad police is 265 bodies they have recovered from the crash site, which is just about few meters away. If I can ask my video journalist to show you, this is the civil hospital. This is one of the wings of the civil hospital, and right behind this is the BJ Medical College hostel where that incident took place. So it roughly takes about 10 minutes for the people to come here, because this is not a small campus. It's a 3 to 4 kilometer widespread campus, and it is known as Asia's biggest civil hospital. So that is why as soon as the plane crash site happened, all the injured and all the dead bodies were being brought here, and right outside you can see at the postmortem that has been filled with the footfalls of the relatives coming in and coming out day and night. 24/7 they have been here ever since the incident has taken place, as you can see. And on the ground, of course, now in the next 24 hours is what we understand, they are aiming to complete the entire DNA test process, because that will help people to identify, that will help the authorities to identify the passengers and hand them over to their relatives.
Now, while the investigators have begun looking for clues at the wreckage site of Air India flight's crash to understand what exactly led to the biggest aviation disaster in over a decade, Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg now faces a new crisis after 787 Dreamliner jet crashed in India that killed at least 241 people. Questions that have only been mounting over how and why the London-bound 787-8 Dreamliner exploded into a massive fire minutes after takeoff. While the rescue operation was the primary focus on Thursday, efforts are on today for the search of material evidence, which includes the black box, which has now been recovered. So far, reports show one of the two so-called black boxes has been located, which contains crucial evidence of a plane's final moments. However, it is still not clear which of the flight data or cockpit voice recorder has been recovered. The Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau of India is looking through the accident site, which is a scene of total devastation with burnt debris and scattered aircraft parts still smoldering. Boeing CEO has found himself in a familiar role, facing another crisis after latest crash. Once again, Boeing's safety concerns have come to the forefront. The company stock is set to extend losses on Friday, which is today, after 5% fall in the previous session. Meanwhile, Ortberg cancelled plans to attend the Paris Air Show, which usually acts as a platform to showcase progress and book orders. This crash risks overshadowing Paris and limiting Boeing's involvement in the aviation industry's largest event. It could take weeks or even months to discover the cause of the crash, and how Ortberg responds during this time will be closely watched.
We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program.
مهار بشه دارن سعی
And shifting focus to the other big story that we've been tracking, this is the Israel-Iran conflict. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Chief Hossein Salami, Major General Mohammad Bagheri are among those killed in Israeli strikes on Iran. In fact, according to a United States sanctions docket that's been accessed, Salami was born in 1960 and headed the secretive agency since 2019. As head of the IRGC, he reported directly to Iran's supreme leader and was among the country's most powerful and influential figures. He was at the helm of IRGC when Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles at Israel in April and October last year. In fact, last January he appeared on IRGC-affiliated media touring an underground missile facility that had been part of Iran's operations against Israel in the month of April and October. According to semi-official Iranian media outlet, the site was manufacturing new special missiles. And if we speak about Major General Mohammad Bagheri, he held several key positions within Iran's military hierarchy, which included Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence and Operations. In 2016, he was appointed Chief of Staff, succeeding Hassan Firozabadi. He was responsible for the coordination and supervision of Iran's regular army. Bagheri also oversaw an expansion of military production, particularly drone and ballistic missile technology after Raisi's ascension. Diplomatically, Bagheri frequently postured on the regime's behalf. Israel has launched an attack on Iran. Israeli Air Force jets struck multiple targets in Iran, which included its nuclear facilities. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that the attack, called the Rising Line, would take many days. Israel's military even said that the attack involved 200 fighter jets, which struck 100 targets in Iran. The targets included Tehran's nuclear and military sites spread across the country. It claimed that the attacks killed the Iranian Armed Forces Chief of Staff, the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, and commander of its emergency command as well. At least 6 top nuclear scientists were also killed in these strikes. Israel claimed that Iran sent 100 drones in retaliation, but most of these were intercepted by Israeli Air Force. Iran's state media television said in Iran's central province and home to key nuclear site had been hit several times and showed footage of heavy smoke billowing from the site. The UN nuclear watchdog also said that Natanz was among the sites targeted in the attacks. It's the same plant that was target of a bomb attack in 2021 as well. Additional strikes were reported against 3 military sites in Iran's northwest region as well. In fact, Rafael Grossi, the head of International Atomic Energy Agency, said that Iranian authorities have informed him that nuclear sites at Fardo and Isfahan have not been hit in Israeli strikes. The strikes killed Iran's highest-ranking military officer, Armed Forces Chief of Staff Mohammad Bagheri. Iranian media also reported that head of powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Hussein Salami, was also killed in the attack. Another senior IRGC commander, Gholam Ali Rashid, was among those killed. Iran's news agency said that 6 nuclear scientists were also among those killed in the airstrikes by the Israeli forces. These included Feridun Abbasi Dawan, Mohammad Mehdi, and among the 6 others, 50 people were reported dead, which included women and children. And shifting focus to what's been happening on the business front as far as the Israel-Iran conflict is concerned, defense talks are in focus following escalation between Israel and Iran. Markets expect defense companies to benefit from rising security concerns and even demand for modern warfare systems. America's Lockheed Martin rose close to 3% in pre-market trading, while Northrop Grumman climbed close to 2% as demand for advanced weapon systems are likely to rise. Parallelly, Indian markets also witnessed some capital rotation during early market hours. While India's defense exports to Israel remained relatively low, experts now suggest that defense stocks are entering a phase of sustained expansion. Investors are also looking to defense stocks as a safe haven in a war-watching economic climate. The rally is supported by a recent report that found global military spending hit a record high of $2.72 trillion. Last year, West Asia and Europe are at the epicenter of this defense spending. National defense budgets are also increasingly positioning themselves for modernizing their warfare capabilities that involves deploying more autonomous drones and even advanced missile systems. For the investor community, defense stocks provide a geopolitical and volatility hedge despite high valuations, but it also raises a moral dilemma, one that questions the uncomfortable reality of profiting from conflict and bloodshed. Now, frequent flyers are left scrambling as airlines are forced to divert, delay or even cancel flights in response to sudden airspace closure over Israel, Iran and Iraq airspace in the region, which is a major aviation corridor for flights connecting Asia and Europe. Several Air India flights from India to Europe have been forced to return to their departure airports, leaving flyers worried about getting to their destination safely. Other major carriers also reported disruption, with several destinations like Iran, Israel, Damascus, Beirut being unserviceable for flyers. This meant commotion at the airport, missed connecting flights and long hours at the airport without clear information. Reports even suggest that Istanbul is emerging as an alternative, but with dozens of flights already in air at any given time, Turkish airport authorities are handling the busiest aviation highway at the moment. Saudi Arabia is also emerging as an alternative for flights being diverted from the region. Aviation experts say that travelers should brace for more volatility as airspace remains restricted. Airlines are expected to delay or even cancel flights as the situation evolves. It remains fluid at this point. The alternative routes are increasing fares, adding hours to flights and even causing congestion, but airlines say that they cannot take any chances at the moment. Meanwhile, India's Ministry of External Affairs in a statement has expressed concerns on these developments between Israel and Iran and offered to provide full support to de-escalate the situation. The MEA has said that it is closely monitoring the evolving situation, including reports linked to attacks on nuclear sites, further adding that Israel and Iran should use existing channels of dialogue and diplomacy to try to calm things down and solve the underlying problems as well. The statement says that India's missions in Israel and Iran are in touch with Iranian community in the region and has cautioned that Indians living in the region to be careful, stay safe and follow local security advisories. And for now, shifting focus to news that we're tracking from the US, it's President Donald Trump who's imposed historically high tariffs and trade restrictions on China for months. The Trump administration has boasted about having the upper hand, with China and US tariffs soared to 145%. But Beijing turned the tables by virtually cutting off exports of rare earth magnets, an important commodity for industries from autos to defense. The United States and other countries swiftly reached their planned threshold as a delayed delivery of items containing rare elements such as terbium that started to impact sectors ranging from autos to defense. Elon Musk meanwhile claimed that shortages were harming his robotics firm Ford Motor and Suzuki Motor idle part of their production. Governments hurried to secure the few supplies outside of China, a worldwide crisis that escalated from a bilateral US-China trade dispute. Now China has found the world's pain point on trade and will use it again at will to leverage discussions with trading partners. The US and China have agreed to a trade deal. Hours after this agreement, a prominent Chinese rare earth magnet maker has said that it had obtained export permits to nations, including the US, the company's shares responding to which jumped 1.2%. However, China is likely to hold back business from stocking up on rare earths, particularly in the military sector. For all the US bluster, company executives and analysts said that the latest episode demonstrated how quickly China's advantage in the rare earths trade can be deployed to secure concessions from countries whenever tensions rise. Most analysts expect China will most likely use that leverage at will Note that rare earths have long been under China's control. In the early 2000s, Beijing instituted export limitations. However, it wasn't until 2010 that the elements were used as a trade weapon, dealing supplies to Japan amid a maritime dispute. That was the beginning of Tokyo's attempts to distance itself from China, which took more time and money than anticipated. After losing a dispute at the World Trade Organization in 2015, China loosened its export limitations, but demand has only gone up since then. While processing may have accelerated and permits eased, any new mine is still some years away. And that's all we had for you in this edition of our broadcast. Heading into a very short break for now. News and updates to continue.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION's Business Master series is an incredible experience. The questions are incredibly thought-provoking, and for me, they force me to introspect about what are the goals, what are the values that really govern the way we want to run our business, the way we want to be as a company, and where we want to be in 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets. WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour. The American President Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social that he gave Iran a chance after chance to make a deal, and writes that hardliners who opposed him had been killed, and warns that it will only get worse, and urges Iran to make a deal before it is too late. The Iranian media reports of a fresh wave of Israeli bombings on IRGC targets in northwest Iran and East Azerbaijan. Explosions have been reported in places such as Kermanshah following earlier blasts that have been reported in Tabriz and Shiraz. And Iran has said that the Israeli attacks earlier today is a clear declaration of war, and calls on the United Nations Security Council to act, and says that at least about 95 people, Iranian people, have sustained injuries in the Israeli bombings that were carried out since yesterday night. And Iran's supreme leader appoints new revolutionary guards and armed forces chiefs to replace those who were assassinated in these targeted bombings by the Israelis. Abdul Rahim Mousavi is to replace Mohammad Bagheri as the chief of the Armed Forces General Staff. The Israeli Defense Forces and Air Force release more footage of the bombings they carried out on the Israeli ballistic missiles aimed at the state of Israel. Iran reportedly claims to have fired about 100 drones at the state of Israel after the Israeli attacks. The IAEA chief warns nuclear facilities must never be attacked, and calls the developments as deeply concerning, and urges for de-escalation from both sides. And the Gujarat ATS recovers the digital video recorder from the debris of the crash. It is to be handed over to a forensic team for further analysis. All right, so let's start this broadcast with some breaking news that in fact just come in. The American President Donald Trump has issued a pretty stern warning to Iran. Now, in a post that he's put out on Truth Social, he has said that he'd asked Iran to sign a deal before there is nothing left. Now, in his Truth Social post, Donald Trump has warned that the next planned attack on Iran will be even more brutal. This is what the American president is saying, that the next planned attack on Iran is going to be even more brutal. Now, Trump further says, and I quote him here, "I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. And I told them in the strongest of words to just do it. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done." Now, Trump says that the US makes the best and the most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world, by far. And the state of Israel has a lot of it because America gives them a lot of it. Now, the American president has warned that Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. These are the words of the sitting American President Donald Trump.
We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program.
مهار بشه دارن سعی
Now, the state of Israel, which launched what is known as Operation Rising Lion, since the wee hours of Friday morning, targeted Iran's nuclear facilities. And the Israelis are calling it a preemptive strike. They've also now upped the ante. The Iranian state television claims that a fresh wave of attack has in fact been reported in Tabriz. And my colleague, Dharamjot Kaur, is of course going to give you more details in terms of how this attack was carried out by the state of Israel. Over to you, Dharamjot.
Thanks, Saleh. As you rightly mentioned, a fresh wave of attack has been reported in Tabriz, in the northwestern part of the country. Meanwhile, the Tasnim news agency of Iran has said that an earlier wave of strikes had hit 10 sites in the East Azerbaijan.
ورودی فرحزاده پایین
مهار بشه و همونطور که مشاهده میکنید نیروهای امداد و نجات کاملا اگر بشه مهار بشه میتونیم بریم از داخل ساختمون هم برای شما تصویر
ورودی فرحزاده پایین.
Now, according to the latest reports, Israel's attack on multiple areas of Iran include the capital of Tehran as well. Many have been wounded and at least 95 people so far have been injured in the attacks. Also, following the assassination of senior commanders, Iran has announced replacements for all of these top commanders who have been killed. Now, Iran has announced that the Revolutionary Guard and Armed Forces leadership has new people at the helm of affairs. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has named Mohammad Pakpour to replace Hossein Salami as commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Abdul Rahim Mosavi has been replaced for Mohammad Bagheri as the chief of the Armed Forces General Staff, who was killed in the Israeli strike. Now, this reshuffle signals Tehran's effort to maintain control amid all the chaos so far. The UN nuclear watchdog, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, claims that Iranian authorities told them that no increase in radiation levels have been observed at the Natanz uranium enrichment site. This after being impacted by Israeli strikes a few hours ago. Meanwhile, the head of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, has warned that nuclear facilities must never be attacked. Russia has slammed Israeli strikes on ally Iran, calling it unacceptable. And it has also said that this is an unprovoked attack by Israel. Russia's foreign ministry has said in a statement that unprovoked military strikes against a sovereign UN member state, its citizens, peaceful cities and nuclear energy infrastructure are categorically unacceptable. Russia and Iran have deepened their military ties amidst Moscow's offensive on Ukraine, threatening to upset years of efforts by the Kremlin to maintain warm relations with all major players in West Asia. That's all we have for you on the latest developments so far. Back to you, Saleh.
Well, thank you very much, Dharamjot, for getting us a quick roundup of all that has happened since these attacks began by the Israelis. Remember, these are what the state of Israel has been describing as preemptive strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. But along with that, they've also hit a number of different targets. But how has this impacted Iran, and what is Iran's response likely to be? To tell us more on this, we joined this broadcast by Ilham Abedini, who is an Iranian journalist and an international affairs expert. Ms. Abedini, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on this broadcast and beyond. Now, for several weeks, we saw what can effectively and only be described as negotiations for an Iranian nuclear deal between the Americans and the Iranians. Is the Iranian leadership guilty of being lulled into a sort of confidence that they would not have been attacked in this manner? Is that what happened here, where Iran was attacked at a time they were simply not prepared for an attack of this nature by the Israelis?
Thank you for having me, Mohammed. Actually, I heard that you said that nuclear facilities is targeted, but below of these nuclear facilities, we see even civilian, even some houses, some apartments has targeted even in Tehran, in the capital city of Iran. So, and as you mentioned, we are in the negotiation process. And it was expected that on Sunday, Iran and the United States again in Oman just see and continue this negotiation. So it shows that how much it was true that Iran could not trust the United States. It is completely obvious that the United States is backing this operation. Although Donald Trump said that we just know this operation and we did not actually help and any assistance to Israel, but it's completely obvious that even if the United States in this special operation, if they didn't assist the Israeli regime, but they show this green line to them. So I myself think that, and after I discussed with some officials, some other journalists, think that the United States cannot put out the responsibility of what happened today, happened in Tehran and also other cities.
Indeed, Ms. Abedini, we want to talk to you more in terms of what the Iranian response is expected to be, and also the role that the United States of America is likely to have played in these attacks on Iran. But before that, let me in fact go across to Rahesha Sehgal, who's joining us with more details on the manner in which the Iranians could, of course, react, because Iran also, the course of the last few years, has built up a pretty solid arsenal of its missiles and other drones that it has at its disposal. So what exactly does Iran have in its arsenal? My colleague Rahesha Sehgal gets you more on this.
Right, thanks, Saleh. Now, following Israel's attack on Iran, Tehran has said that it will avenge attacks by Israel on its infrastructure in a situation that is perhaps escalating by the minute. And Tel Aviv braces for a response. Now, here's a list of ballistic missiles and drones that Iran has in its arsenal. So let's begin. First up, the Sejil. Now, this is a medium-range ballistic missile with a range of around 2,000 to 2,500 kilometers. Next up is the Khurramshar missile. It is a medium-range ballistic missile and it has a range of around 2,000 kilometers. Third major ballistic missile in Iran's arsenal is Ahmad. Now, this missile has a range of 2,000 kilometers and is an intermediate-range ballistic missile. Fourth on the list is Shahab 3. This has a range of 2,000 kilometers and is again a medium-range ballistic missile, also with a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. Next up, and the fifth missile we're talking about here is Ghadar. The range of this missile is 1,950 kilometers. Let's also now take a look at some other missiles in Iran's military chest. Number 1, the Pave. Now, this missile has a range of 1,650 kilometers and it is a surface-to-surface cruise missile. Like I mentioned, the range is 1,650 kilometers. Next on the list is the Khyber Shekhan. This has a range of 1,450 kilometers and is a solid fuel medium-range ballistic missile. Third on the list is Fatah 2. This one has a range of 1,400 kilometers and is another solid fuel medium-range ballistic missile. Lastly, Hajj Qasim. Now, this is a next generation of the Fateh 110 with a range of 1,400 kilometers. Let's now take a look at the type of drones that Iran has in its war chest. First up, Shahid 149 Gaza. Now, this one is a UAV type kind of missile and this has a range of 4,000 kilometers. The speed is 300 kilometers per hour and it has a payload of 500 kg. Its capabilities include carrying precision-guided bombs and missiles capable of surveillance and high payload strike missions. Next up, Shahid 136. Now, this is a loitering munition UAV, and this one is also called the suicide drone. This has a range of 2,500 kilometers with a payload of around 10 to 50 kg of explosive warhead. The capability of Shahid 136 is that it is GPS guided and has swarm tactics which are effective against radars. Third on the list is Shahid 129, which is a medium altitude long endurance UAV. Shahid 129 has a range of around 2,000 kilometers and a payload of 400 kgs. It has been equipped with precision guided bombs and also Sadid-1 missiles. Next up we're talking about is Karar. Now, this drone in Iran's war chest is a combat UAV with a range of 1,000 kilometers. Speed is 900 kilometers per hour and the payload is 227 kg. When we talk about its capabilities, it's armed with air-to-ground missiles and bombs. Next up, the Arash 2. This drone is a long-range loitering munition. This has a range of 1,000 kilometers, speed 400 kilometers per hour, payload 30 kgs. And talking about the capabilities of the Arash 2 drone, it's designed to penetrate air defenses and strike high-value targets. So it can penetrate deep inside. Drone number 6. This one is another Shahid variant. This is called Shahid 191. It is a stealth combat UAV with a range of 450 kilometers and a speed of 300 kilometers per hour. Apart from that, the payload is 50 kgs, and when we talk about the capabilities, it has the ability to carry precision-guided bombs and air-to-ground missiles. Iran has reverse-engineered this drone from US RQ-170. And last on the list is the Muhajir 6, which is a tactical UAV drone, a range of 200 kilometers and payload of 40 kg. Muhajir 6 can carry up to 4 precision-guided Sadid 345 bombs and also missiles. So that's all about Iran's war chest. Back to you, Saleh.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Rahesha Sehgal, for getting us a very comprehensive list of the many missiles and drones that Iran has in its war chest. But it remains to be seen as to how many of these have been destroyed by the Israelis in these attacks that they've carried out since yesterday night. And we've got the Iranian journalist, Ms. Ilham Abedini, who is joining us live from Tehran at this moment. Ms. Abedini, we were speaking to you about these preemptive strikes, as the Israelis claim these attacks actually are. But the question that I want to ask you is this. You know, in the wake of Donald Trump's post that he's put out on Truth Social, where he has said that I gave chance after chance for Iran to strike a deal, although they reached close, but they never struck a deal. Do you think it is the Americans who have backed the Israelis in carrying out these attacks, on Iran's nuclear infrastructure? And what does this mean for those negotiations that have been ongoing for striking a nuclear deal with Iran and the United States?
Absolutely. I think that the Israeli regime would not do any assassination, any genocide attack against Iran, Syria, Palestinian, anyone without green light of the United States. And in this operation, I think that the United States cannot put off the responsibility of the assistance to Israeli regime. And this is, as you mentioned, we are in the negotiation with the United States. But although we were on the negotiation table, the United States did this assistance with Israeli regime. So I think that, as officials said, that the United States military bases, their personnel, they would be another legitimate targets of Iran besides of Israeli regime targets in the Israeli and I mean occupied Palestine. So I think that, as officials said, that Iran would respond firmly, I suppose, in the next hours. And I think even the United States target would be the legitimate target of Iran.
Interesting. Now, what the Israelis have hit, besides the nuclear facilities, they've effectively carried out a decapitation attack on Iran's top military leadership. The who's who of Iran's top military leadership does not now exist. With the top leadership now gone, do you think Iran is even in a position to put up a concerted sort of a response to not just the Israelis, but in fact even to the Americans who've been backing the Israelis to the hilt?
I suppose, as Israel claims, it was not preemptive strike. Since in the last 45 last years, Iran never strikes first. So I completely refuse this one, that this was not a preemptive strike, because Iran would not strike any entity in the actually 45 years. And I think that in these years after the Islamic Republic Revolution, in these years, we faced many assassinations, even 8 years war. So we know how we can deal with these issues.
All right. Interesting. We'll have to see as to how this crisis, of course, unfolds. Ms. Abedin, thank you very much indeed for joining us and getting us all those insights there. Let's now get you some breaking news that in fact just come in, where the Israeli Defense Ministry has said that the Israeli airstrikes across Iran have neutralized most of the senior leadership of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Air Force. The Air Force fighter jets attacked the headquarters where the commander of the Revolutionary Guards Air Force, Amir Ali Hajizadeh, was located, along with other senior officials. The ministry said in its statement that the Israeli Defense Minister was informed that most of the Revolutionary Guard Air Force leadership has been completely decapitated while convening at their underground headquarters. The Revolutionary Guards are involved in overseeing Iran's airspace and controlling the country's ballistic missile arsenal. So this, of course, is the latest that's in fact coming in with what the Israelis are claiming. Remember, it's not just the Iranian nuclear sites that have been struck by the state of Israel. And the American president's statement is very interesting. Effectively, the American president has admitted that the Americans have, of course, backed the Israelis in these attacks that are being carried out, which the Israelis are claiming are preemptive attacks. When you say preemptive attacks, that means that the Israelis were expecting that the Iranians were about to strike at Israel, and before they could do that, the Israelis went ahead and staged these attacks. But what is evident and what is abundantly clear, and what the Iranians say, is that they were more interested in negotiations, and this is an attack that has taken the Iranians completely by surprise, because they were simply not expecting an attack of this scale and this magnitude, which the state of Israel has carried out. It's interestingly named this operation Rising Lion, which has many interesting connotations associated to it. And the American president, through his post, now admitting that the Israelis, of course, had his blessings to carry out this attack on Iran. And the state of Israel is on high alert after it has staged these high-profile attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. Now, Israel's own nuclear plants are now high-value targets for Iran. The official word from the Israeli government is that it is not a nuclear power. This is what it officially keeps claiming, that it is not a nuclear power. But this is the world's worst kept secret, because it's pretty evident, and this is something that's been a matter of consensus by many nuclear experts, that the state of Israel has a nuclear program and has had nuclear weapons right from the late 1960s onwards. Now, Israel maintains what it describes a policy of deliberate ambiguity. In fact, public discussion of the country's national nuclear weapons policy is subject to censorship. That's interesting. However, it is widely acknowledged that Israel has nuclear weapons. These are Israel's suspected nuclear plants. Israel's main nuclear weapons development site is near the city of Dimona in the Negev desert. And it has been operational right from the 1960s onwards. It was built with French assistance, and there are 2 nuclear centers that are suspected to be very close to Tel Aviv as well. These are the Sorech Nuclear Research Center and the Palmachim Air Base. And finally, there is Zakharia Air Base in central Israel, which is believed to be a key part of the Israelis' second strike capability, besides the Dolphin submarines, which the Israelis also have, through which they can also launch nuclear strikes in case of a necessity. So, Israeli attacks on Iran's nuclear facility and military infrastructure has long been in the making. It's bizarre that the Iranians were not able to foresee something like this. Now, this is according to a report that is emerging within the Israeli media, where an Israeli official has now revealed some very specific details of this interestingly named Operation Rising Lion. So, this means that the lion is about to rise. The official has said that this operation is the result of joint planning between the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad. So here's a quick breakdown of how the state of Israel planned and prepared for this Operation Rising Lion. The official reportedly said that Israel has spent years and years in planning to target Iran's nuclear and missile programs. Israelis have carried out 3 covert acts to make this happen. Firstly, the Israelis built a drone base near Tehran, Iran's capital. From here, Israel activated these drones overnight, striking surface-to-surface missile launches of Iran. Secondly, Israel has also smuggled some precision weapon systems into Iran by smuggling in vehicles and avoiding domestic intelligence surveillance. Thirdly, the Israelis secretly sent their commandos and agents into Iran over a period of time. In Israel's attack, Iran's Natanz enrichment site, which is one of the 2 underground nuclear sites, has been hit. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu said that the Natanz site has been hit several times in the course of these attacks that the Israelis have been carrying out since the wee hours of the morning today. And with that, wrap on this edition of our newscast. Stay tuned to WION.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look as to what is making headlines at this hour. The American President Donald Trump posts on Truth Social that he has given Iran chance after chance to make a deal, and writes that hardliners who opposed him have been killed, and warns that it will only get worse. He's also now interestingly urging the Iranians to make a deal before there is nothing left of Iran. The Iranian media has now reported a fresh wave of bombings by the Israelis targeting the IRGC in the northwest of Iran and East Azerbaijan. Explosions have been reported in Kermanshah, following blasts in places such as Tabriz and Shiraz. Now, Iran says that Israel's attacks early today is a clear declaration of war and calls on the United Nations Security Council to act, and says that at least about 95 people have sustained some very grievous injuries in the first round of the Israeli bombings on Iran. And Iran's Supreme Leader appoints a new Revolutionary Guard Corps and Armed Forces Chief to replace those who've been killed in this decapitation attack carried out by the Israelis. Abdul Rahim Muswi is to replace Mohammad Bagheri as the Chief of the Armed Forces General Staff. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces and Air Force release more footage of strikes on Iran's ballistic missiles aimed at Israel. Iran has fired over 100 drones at Israel after the Israeli strikes. The IAEA chief has warned nuclear facilities must never be attacked and calls the developments as deeply concerning. He's now urging for de-escalation from both sides. And the Gujarat ATS has now recovered the digital video recorder from the debris of the crash. It is to be handed over to a forensic team for analysis.
We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program.
مهار بشه دارن سعی
Now, Iran says it will hold the Americans responsible for the consequences of the Israelis' deadly attacks targeting Iranian cities and nuclear sites. Now, Iran's foreign ministry has said that these aggressive attacks cannot have been carried out by the Israelis without the active coordination and participation of the United States. The statement from Tehran has come as the American President Donald Trump reportedly told Fox News that he had advance knowledge of the Israeli attacks on Iran. Now, according to the broadcaster, Trump specified that Iran must never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. Just hours before the strikes happened, Trump had said that there was a clear chance of a massive conflict in the region and that anything could happen.
There's a chance of massive conflict. We have a lot of American people in this area, and I said, we got to tell them to get out because something could happen soon. And I don't want to be the one that didn't give any warning and missiles are flying into their buildings. It's possible.
The Secretary of State Marco Rubio has denied the U.S. involvement in the Israeli attacks and has warned Iran against counter-attacking the American bases. Now, Iran and the U.S. nuclear talks mediator Oman has condemned the Israeli attacks and has described it as a very dangerous escalation. Early on Friday, Israel conducted what it claims are preemptive attacks on Iran aimed at destroying Iran's nuclear infrastructure, its ballistic missile factories and military capabilities, along with the military leadership of Iran. The Israeli beleaguered Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that this operation, that has been very interestingly named as the Rising Lion, will continue until the Israeli mission is completed.
Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons.
All right, so that was an interesting statement by the Israeli Prime Minister in the aftermath of carrying out these attacks. Netanyahu further claims that Iran has enriched enough uranium for 9 nuclear bombs and that these strikes were aimed at rolling back Iranian threats at the Israeli survival. But a lot of people are questioning if Iran does have adequate nuclear material for 9 nuclear bombs, or the Israelis have in fact staged an attack of this scale and magnitude.
In years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year.
All right, so that, of course, is the explanation by the Israeli Prime Minister. Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Mohammad Bagheri, and the Revolutionary Guard's leader, Hossein Salami, have been confirmed dead in these decapitation strikes by the Israelis. Now, Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has warned the State of Israel will receive a harsh punishment in accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter. Iran's Revolutionary Guard's Chief Hossein Salami, Major General Mohammad Bagheri are amongst those who have been killed in these Israeli attacks on Iran. According to the United States sanctions docket, Salami was born in 1960 and headed the secretive agency since 2019. As the head of the IRGC, he reported directly to Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and was amongst the country's most powerful and influential figures. He was at the helm of the IRGC when Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles at the State of Israel in April and then again in October last year. Last January, he appeared on the IRGC-affiliated media touring an underground missile facility that had been part of Iran's operations against Israel in April and October. Now, according to the semi-official Iranian media outlet Mehr, the site was manufacturing some new special missiles. And we speak about Major General Mohammad Bagheri. He held several key positions within Iran's military hierarchy, including the Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence and Operations. In June 2016, he was appointed the Chief of Staff, succeeding Hassan Firozabadi. He was responsible for the coordination and the supervision of Iran's regular army. Bagheri oversaw an expansion of the military production, particularly drone and ballistic missile technology, after Raisi's ascension. Diplomatically, Bagheri frequently postured on the regime's behalf. All right, let's now give you some breaking news that's just come in, where Iran says that most of the damage at the underground uranium enrichment plant is only at the surface level. This is what the Iranians are claiming. Even as the Israelis have continued with their bombardment, Iran's Atomic Energy Organization says that most of the damage from the Israeli airstrikes targeted its underground uranium enrichment facility at Natanz at the ground level. Now, the organization's spokesman, Behrouz Kamalvandi, has said that the most of the damage is on the surface level. He added that there are no casualties at the facility where the enrichment centrifuges had been housed underground. Now, in the aftermath of these Israeli attacks on Iran, India has urged both the State of Israel and Iran to avoid escalatory steps and to engage in dialogue and diplomacy. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs has said that it is very closely monitoring the situation, including the reported attacks on Iran's nuclear sites. Now, the MEA has further stated that dialogue and diplomacy must be utilized to work towards a de-escalation and to resolve the underlying issues. The government has also issued an advisory for Indian nationals and persons of Indian origin in Iran, asking them to remain vigilant and to follow the embassy's social media accounts for more updates. Now, the escalating tensions between Israel and Iran have raised concerns over the safety of Indians in West Asia. And according to government figures, more than 26,000 Indians reside in the State of Israel and around 4,000 are in Iran. In Saudi Arabia, there are about 2.7 million Indians, while 1 million live in Kuwait. And WION's assistant editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibil, has sent us this report. Listen in.
The situation in West Asia remains precarious. We know that Israel had made strikes on Iran, and there have been global reactions coming, including from India. Earlier today, India's Ministry of External Affairs issued a statement calling for dialogue and diplomacy. Now, for India, there are three major challenges. First, of course, is the big Indian community in the West Asian region. Approximately 3,000 to 4,000 Indian nationals in Iran, 30,000 Indian nationals in Israel, and Indian nationals in other countries of West Asia as well. And if the situation deteriorates, it will impact them as well. The second, of course, is the crude oil prices. Given the fact that the situation remains tense, it could impact the crude oil prices, and an increase, of course, will definitely lead to inflationary pressures here in India, which is one of the biggest importer of energy, especially from the West Asian region. The third, of course, is connectivity and maritime trade, which could come under disruption if the situation escalates. So all these three things are something that India is closely monitoring. With video journalist Neeraj Patel, Siddhant Sibil for WION in New Delhi.
A large-scale DNA sampling drive is underway to identify the victims of the airplane crash in Ahmedabad. Forensic teams are working very closely to identify the victims of the Air India plane crash, and DNA test results are expected within 72 hours. Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the crash site in Ahmedabad today. The Indian Prime Minister also visited the hospital to meet with the lone survivor of the crash. So that is the Indian Prime Minister talking to this miracle man who managed to come out of this crash alive. A London-bound passenger jet crashed in Ahmedabad on Thursday, killing at least about 265 people on board and on the ground. One passenger managed to survive miraculously. I mean, imagine surviving and walking out of a plane crash on the feet. 40-year-old Vishwas Kumar is the sole survivor of this crash. He was seated on seat number 11A in the plane. The government has now opened a formal investigation into the cause of this catastrophic crash. The Air India CEO Campbell Wilson arrived at the plane crash site today. Now, India's Civil Aviation Authority has said that 2 pilots and 10 cabin crew members were amongst the 242 people on board. Now, Air India has said that there were 169 Indian passengers, 53 British, 7 Portuguese and a Canadian on board the flight that was bound for London's Gatwick Airport. That suggests that at least about 24 people have died with the jet ploughed into a medical staff hotel in a blazing fireball, and that the toll may actually rise further as more bodies are located. Now, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that the scenes from the crash site were simply devastating, while the country's King Charles III has said that he was desperately shocked. Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, the lone survivor of the crash of a London-bound Air India flight in Ahmedabad, says that he simply does not know how he managed to get out of this plane crash alive. He recounts the moments of his miraculous survival. Take a listen.
मेरे नज़रों के सब सामने हुआ था. मेरे खुद को भी बिलीव नहीं होता कि मैं कैसे उसमें से जिंदा बाहर निकला, क्योंकि थोड़ा टाइम लिए कि तो मेरे को लगा था कि मैं भी मरने वाला हूँ. लेकिन जब मेरी आँख खुल के मैं देखा ना, तो मुझे लगा मैं जिंदा हूँ. तो मैंने ट्राई किया, जब मेरी सीट थे वो मेरी बेल्ट निकाला, मैंने वो ट्राई किया जहाँ से निकल सकता वहाँ से, तो मैं निकल गया वहाँ से. मेरे नज़रों के सामने एयर हॉस्टल और दूसरे आंटी अंकल सभी उसमें मेस हो गए थे सभी. मैं जो साइड पे था ना, वो साइड हॉस्टल पे नहीं लैंड हुई थी. हॉस्टल के जो ग्राउंड फ्लोर है ना, जैसे नीचे वहाँ लैंड हुई थी. तो मुझे दूसरे के बारे में मेरे को पता नहीं, लेकिन मैं जहाँ लैंड हुआ था ना, वो नीचे की साइड थी. तो जब वहाँ थोड़ा पेस भी था प्लेन के जब बाहर, तो जब जैसे मेरा डोर टूटा ना सब, तो मैंने देखा ना जब सामने कि थोड़ा इधर पेस है, तो मैं ट्राई कर सकता हूँ निकलने के लिए. तो मैंने ट्राई किया निकलने के लिए, तो फिर मैं निकल गया उधर, क्योंकि अपोजिट साइड पे था ना, वो बिल्डिंग का वो था ना दीवार, तो उधर से कोई शायद नहीं निकल सका होगा, क्योंकि उधर पूरा उधर ही क्रैश हुआ था. मैं जो जहाँ था वहाँ थोड़ा पेस था. फिर भी मेरे पता नहीं मैं कैसे बचा हूँ, क्योंकि मेरे नज़र के सामने ही सब 2 एयर होस्टल अंकल आंटी सब उधर ही सब.
All right, so that is the personal testimony of this man, the miracle man who managed to walk out of a plane crash alive. He was on his feet as he walked away from the rubble and is now undergoing treatment for the injuries that he sustained. And our principal correspondent, Disha Shah, is joining us live from Ahmedabad. Disha, you've been tracking all the developments that are unfolding in the aftermath of this very tragic air crash that happened in Ahmedabad. Give us a sense of what's in fact unfolding there at the moment. How much further has the investigation gone into to ascertain the cause of this crash?
Well, absolutely. First, I want to show you where I am. I am right here at the civil hospital, which is known as Asia's biggest civil hospital. And right in front of me is the trauma center. This is the new trauma center that you can see. You can see the ambulances also that is continuously arriving. And here inside the trauma center, there are more than 60 survivors is what we are being told. They are getting the treatment. The 60 survivors are the resident doctors of the doctors' hostel where the plane crashed yesterday. And even the lone survivor of the plane crash is also getting the treatment right here at the trauma center. And outside you can see there are a few relatives also of the survivors who are standing at this point in time, and they are eagerly waiting to meet the victims in concern. But on the other hand, if you talk about the on-ground situation here, the civil hospital is just about 1.5 kilometers away from the crash site. So immediately when the flight crashed, all the injured as well as all the dead bodies were brought in here at this specific hospital as we speak. And continuous overnight there has been movements right here at the trauma center, at the postmortem ward, and even at the DNA center. Earlier we were at the DNA lab center, which has been built in one of the buildings here, where hundreds of relatives of the victims have come from across the country. They are here giving their DNA test samples because it will help authorities to identify the passengers in concern. Secondly, we also went to the post-mortem ward where more than 250 dead bodies that were recovered have been kept inside that specific post-mortem ward, and we could see the relatives coming in, getting emotional because they still do not know whether the patient is over there or whether the patient, the victim is somewhere else. So this is something, even 24 hours to the incident, we still do not have clarity on certain things. Firstly, what caused the accident, because that is something which the inquiry team is really doing as we speak.
Right.
Secondly, the total death number, because right now 265 is what the Ahmedabad police has stated, but it could go further is what they are predicting. And thirdly, the DNA test sample will take another 24 hours to complete, and later only then the dead bodies will be handed over to the concerned family members.
Indeed. That's of course true. Disha, this is a dual tragedy. There were passengers on board the flight. 241 of them have perished. One managed to survive. And then there were these doctors at the hostel on whom this plane fell. At this moment, has everyone within that hostel been accounted for? Tell us a bit about what's in fact the condition of the hostel on top of which this plane fell.
Well, absolutely. Earlier, for a couple of hours, we were there right at the crash site, where specifically right outside we saw there were 5 buildings of the hostel which were completely burnt. And the condition, the damage has been really extensive and significant. It took nearly 12 to 13 hours for the rescue team to conduct the rescue operations and remove most of and the maximum dead bodies from under the debris. And even as we speak, the debris removal work is underway. However, the forensic team and the other central agencies are there at the spot. They are trying to assess the extent to what damage has been done, and they are also collecting the evidences from the ground level, from the crash site. The location and the visuals that we have seen is something which is next to impossible, because the plane crashed in one of the hostel buildings, and it was a usual day for more than hundreds of resident doctors who were having their lunch. It was a lunch time, and little did they know that something like this could happen. And there have been casualties according to what the police has stated, but how many is something which is not confirmed. But 50 to 60 of them have managed to survive, and they are currently here at the trauma center right behind me. They are getting the treatment, and the remaining resident doctors who were not present at the time of the shift and who managed to survive the incident, they have been shifted to the other buildings from the same campus. So let me show you. This is the huge civil hospital campus. It is not only spread across where I am, but it is about 3 to 4 kilometers huge area. And under this civil hospital, on the other end, there is the BJ Medical College Doctors Hostel where the incident took place. So this area also has a lot of other hostel facilities for the resident doctors. So for temporary, all of the affected resident doctors will be shifting to the other hostel facilities is what we understand. And on the ground level right now, the forensic team, the central agencies are working. They have also recovered a DVR is what we understand. One black box also has been recovered. So that will of course let us know what triggered the accident. This will take a while because they are also trying to figure out the next second black box as well.
Absolutely, indeed. Disha Shah, thank you very much indeed for joining us and getting us all those very comprehensive details of what's in fact been unfolding at the site of the crash. We'll of course come back to you as more details emerge in this story. For now though, we'll slip into a short break. More news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned to WION.
We're giving an AI-generated video where we can analyze your credit history, your credit score.
It's all about now content. Yeah. A lot of it is now digital. A lot of TV content is still being watched.
I think it's been a fantastic journey. We have succeeded in some of our original goals, which was to bring credit accessibility to both companies and individuals.
Key milestones of traction under your leadership.
Getting actually a personal check from Mr. Ratan Tata. We got an opportunity to get listed.
One of the biggest things that has changed in Razorpay over the last 5-6 years I've been is to be a single product, single business company to a multi-product, multi-business company.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us. You're watching the latest coming in from around the world here on WION World is One. I'm Molly Gambhir. We're starting off with a quick look at the top stories making headlines. US President Donald Trump urges Iran to make a deal, warning that there will be more death and destruction after Israel launched deadly strikes targeting Iranian nuclear facilities. Fresh attacks on Iran's Tabriz. Column of smoke seen rising from the airport. Iran has promised a harsh response. Iran's Revolutionary Guards confirmed that the aerospace commander had been killed with fellow officers in an Israeli airstrike on their command center. Iran says most of the damage from Israeli airstrikes targeting its underground uranium enrichment facility at Natanz is at ground level, claims no casualties. Global airlines cancel flights to Tel Aviv, Tehran and other destinations in West Asia or rerouted planes as airspaces shut following Israeli strikes on Iran. Oil prices soared and stocks sank after Israel launched the strikes on nuclear and military sites in Iran, stoking fears of a full-blown war. And we are starting off this edition with some breaking news coming in right this minute. Iran confirming Israel killed the Guards aerospace commander. Iran has now confirmed that the Israeli strikes killed General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, the head of the Revolutionary Guards missile program. In fact, the Israeli military said that Iran's drone force commander and the aerial command chief also killed in the strike. Iranian state media reported that as part of the combined opening strike, Israeli Air Force fighter jets struck the command center where the commander of the IRGC's Air Force, Amir Ali Hajizadeh, was located along with other senior officials and the leader of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, General Hossein Salami, and the chief of staff of its armed forces, General Mohammad Bagheri, were also confirmed dead. Iranian state television reported. That's the latest coming in as far as the situation in West Asia is concerned following that strike. A large-scale DNA sampling drive is underway to identify the victims of the airplane crash in Ahmedabad. Forensic teams are working continuously to identify the victims of the Air India plane crash, and DNA test results are expected within 72 hours. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the crash site in Ahmedabad today. Prime Minister Modi also visited the hospital to meet the lone survivor of the crash. The London-bound plane crashed in Ahmedabad, killing in fact, one passenger miraculously survived, 40-year-old being the sole survivor of the crash. The government has opened a formal investigation into the cause of the crash, and the Air India CEO arrived at the plane crash site today as well. India's Civil Aviation Authority has said 2 pilots and 10 cabin crew were among those on board. Air India has said there were 169 Indian passengers, 53 British, 7 Portuguese and a Canadian on board the flight. And that suggests that at least 24 people died when the jet plowed into a medical staff hostel in a blazing fireball, and that the toll may rise further as more bodies are located. The UK Prime Minister has said the scenes from the crash were devastating, while the country's, in fact, while King Charles has also said that he was desperately shocked. And with us on the broadcast this minute is Jitendra Bhargava, former Executive Director, Air India, and author of the book, The Descent of Air India. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast. At this point, while we obviously don't want to get into any sort of speculation, there's understandably also that sentiment of trying to understand what could have happened. But at this point, I want to understand from you your assessment of the details that have come in so far.
See, it's been 24 hours plus since the tragedy took place, the horrific accident took place, and several things have happened. As you yourself said in the report, DNA process has been put into motion, because when you have a fire, you know, the mutilated bodies, you can't really make out what is there, that's one. But from the investigation perspective, the recovery of the black box, which will be a main kind of a device to give out the details as to what happened on board the aircraft in the last few minutes. This black box is a device which captures everything, the altitude, the load, and what was being spoken about in the cockpit. And if the commander did give a hint to the co-pilot or to anybody, or made a public announcement on the public address system to the passengers that we are in trouble, etc., everything would have got recorded. And once this black box gets decoded, we'll have a wealth of information to give us a clue as to what really led to the horrific crash. Till such time, one can only speculate, as one knows about it, that it happened in the afternoon when the visibility was very good, so weather condition is out. Engines, if there was any kind of problem, we'll have to look at it. And we really have to get into detail once the process begins now. were all waiting for the recovery of the black box. There are basically two of them on a flight. They've recovered one. They'll probably get the second one also. And then once they're decoded, wealth of information will be available to the investigators. And once they do it, it takes about 15 days' time to classify all information. And that will also give a perspective whether the aircraft, Dreamliner in this case, there were some technical issues. Was it recent origin because of maintenance, or was it an inherent defect in the aircraft, which is very unlikely, but I'm just hazarding a guess kind of thing to look at. And then you have the pilot's pen. We all know the commander of this particular flight had 8,200 hours of flying experience. So what has gone wrong? So we'll all await with bated breath the investigators' report. And this investigation report, you know, with the involvement of Boeing Company, Air India, a regulatory agency, and possibly the National Safety Transportation Board of United States, everybody gets involved in getting it. Because everybody is interested in finding the final thing as to what led to the horrific crash.
Absolutely. What can you share with us about what the investigation process looks like in such cases? If you can just break down for us the steps involved for the benefit of our viewers.
You know, the investigators would look at every aspect. Say the history, recent history of this particular aircraft. If it operated an X number of flights in the past 3 months, 6 months, was it that there was a recurring problem on this aircraft? Was it being grounded kind of thing? Likewise with the pilot. History of pilot, okay, he's got 8,200 hours of flying experience, but of late in the last 3 months, was there any kind of incident involved? And you start ruling it out one by one and what could possibly have led to it. And then, of course, as I said, the black box will give a wealth of information to the investigators. What happened in the last few dying moments when the plane took off, couldn't go beyond, couldn't be lifted, thing, then got onto a trajectory for downward, hurtling down on those buildings at great speed, etc. Why couldn't the pilot slow down? All those kind of questions that we will have in our mind will get answered.
Right. Before we let you go, I just want to ask you, what would you like to say to those who naturally have a lot of anger at this point after what has happened, and to those who've lost their loved ones, and to those who are probably scared about boarding the next flight?
You know, there are two aspects to it. One, the anger is fully justified. When you lose somebody who's dear to you, who was with you only yesterday, you have perhaps seen him off at the airport, and then to hear about his unfortunate demise in an accident. Anger is but natural. But then, as not just I'm talking of Air India, but any accident that has taken place in any part of the world, people come back and start flying. They overcome the initial trauma that they've gone through, particularly the family members of the people who have perished. Then it gets back to normal because they realize that this is a one-off accident. Because if you look up the track record of an airline and say, look, the airline track record measured in terms of accidents per million passengers flown or accidents per million takeoff and landing. And then you find, well, the safety record is as good as any other airline in the world. So the initial setback will be there, which is understandable. But later, as we find, and we have found in the case of all accidents in the past anywhere in the world, that people come back to flying because ultimately they realize that air travel is the safest mode of transportation. There is no more railways, buses, your own cars being driven, etc., which are safer than air travel.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you.
And while we will, of course, keep a close eye on the latest coming in regarding that airplane crash and continue to piece together the developments for you, let's just shift focus now to the aftermath of Israel's attack on Iran. A number of questions at this point, including what Iran's arsenal really looks like. My colleague Rahisha Sehgal breaking it down for you.
Thanks, Molly. Now, following Israel's attack on Iran, Tehran has said that it will avenge attacks by Israel on its infrastructure. In a situation that is perhaps escalating by the minute, and Tel Aviv braces for a response. Here's a list of ballistic missiles and drones that Iran has in its arsenal. So let's begin. First up, it's the Sejil. It's a medium-range ballistic missile with a range of 2,000 to 2,500 kilometers. Next up, the next missile is Khurram Sher. This is another medium-range ballistic missile. It's a BRBM with a range of 2,000 kilometers. The third missile in Iran's war chest, it is a ballistic missile. It is called Emad. This is an intermediate range ballistic missile. It's an IRBM and it has a range of around 2,000 kilometers. Fourth on the list is Shahab 3. This is a medium range ballistic missile again, and this one has a range of 2,000 kilometers. Fifth is Ghadar. It is an intermediate range ballistic missile. It's an IRBM, and the Ghadar missile in Iran's war chest, it has a range of 1,950 kilometers. Let's now